Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Joe McGiverin, Chairman of the Holyoke City Council's Finance Committee. To my left is our Vice Chair, Jim Leahy. To his left, our newest member of the Finance Committee, Councilor from Ward 3, Dave Bartley. To my right, City Councilor at Large, Mike Sullivan. And to Mike's right is City Councilor Peter Tallman, all members of the Finance Committee. We also have with us Councilor Murphy, and we have not a long agenda, but a couple things that we need to act on. And in a moment, if we could take item number 1 off the table.
Moved.
Motion made second to take up item number 1, which was introduced by Councilor McGee, referred to here by the full City Council. In order that the executive session, the Finance Committee go into executive session to discuss settlement offers pending litigation for the matters of Pagan versus the City of Holyoke and MCAD Gates versus the City of Holyoke. On the motion to take that off the table for discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. We have lined up in advance, and as the agenda says, a option to go into executive session. The chair is going to quickly note that we are in regular session at the moment. We are being televised. We will go, if so voted, we will go into executive session for which we will be tape recorded. Executive session will be for the sole purpose of discussing litigation against the City of Holyoke, as mentioned in Councilor McGee's order. There are 2 items on the agenda, 2 and 3, that are requested transfers that go hand in hand with the settlements for the 2 cases that are cited by the by Councilor McGee's order. So in order to go into executive session, the chair will entertain a motion that the Finance Committee move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation as noted in the order and as noted on items 2 and 3.
So moved.
On that motion, is there any discussion?
Yep.
It's a roll call vote.
Joe?
Councilor Bartley.
Just quickly, thank you, Joe, for the introduction, and thanks for running the meeting, as you always do. On executive session, we are going to come back into regular session. So
That is correct.
So we want to announce that.
That is correct.
And second of all, on the cameras, so we're on TV now. When we go into executive session, the cameras and the microphones will be turned off.
You are 2 steps ahead of me, Councilor Bartley, but good points. We will be coming back into regular session, possibly to vote on these items, and we also have 3 other items on our agenda that we will be discussing and possibly voting on this evening. If we take any final votes in executive sessions or pertaining to the votes this evening, we will announce that, but more important, we will announce that we are ready to vote on items 2 and 3. Cameras and microphones, my suggestion was about to be, before we vote on the motion, is that we not research, but we take our executive session into the back room, which is tradition with committees, and that we will have our tape recorder back there for the purpose of recording the minutes, and we will take any executive session, only executive session items in the back room.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any objection to that? Is there any further discussion? On a roll call vote, if you say yes, you're in favor of executive session. If you say no, you are against executive session. McGiverin, yes. Leahy?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
And Tallman?
Yes.
This committee is in executive session. We will be in executive session for approximately 30 to 45 minutes. We will then come back out into regular session to continue business. It is 7:15. This is the Holyoke City Council Finance Committee. We just met in executive session for approximately 1 hour, 15 minutes more than I said we would be in there. The action taken in executive session was pertaining to item number 1 on the agenda this evening by Councilor McGee, an executive session to discuss settlement offers regarding litigation in 2 matters versus the City of Holyoke, 1 being Pagan versus the City of Holyoke and 2 being the MCAD Gates versus the City of Holyoke. That discussion did take place, so I'd like to call this meeting back into session, recognize Executive session was adjourned by roll call, but now recognize we're back in session with Counselor Tallman, Sullivan, McGiverin, Bartley, and Leahy. Counselor Leahy did abstain on the Pagan matter, and he will abstain on that item in a minute when we come to it. The chair will entertain on item number 1, a motion that this order has now been complied with.
Item 1 has been complied with.
Motion made, second that item number 1 is complied with. The Finance Committee, as requested to and directed by the full City Council, did meet in executive session for said purpose. Any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Now we have, take up separate, item number 2 is a request for transfer. And this is, if we take off the table for discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Came in under my name, as all transfers come in under the chairs. A request from stabilization, $65,000 to legal claims, $65,000. Under discussion, the chair will recognize that this particular settlement was part of what we discussed in executive session. We have the facts and understandings, but the settlement is subject to appropriation, so some of those facts are still part of executive session until we decide to go forward with the request for transfer by the mayor. With that in mind, is there any motion on this transfer?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the transfers from stabilization to legal claims.
And I'll second that for purpose of the discussion. Any discussion on the transfer?
Just a discussion, can you, I know I think you just walked through it, but can you just give a line item of what they're for? Or do we have a breakdown, like itemized?
Yes, we've been informed by the law department that the mayor has agreed to settle a claim against the litigation against the city. This involves the, excuse me. This is the Gates one, right? No.
No, this is the Pagan.
Oh, so then I have to,
So then that's why I'm trying not to say anything. This is the one where Council Leahy has to abstain, or can choose to abstain,
I
doesn't
choose
he? Okay, Council Leahy will abstain from this,
So item 2 is Pagan?
yes.
Appears to be.
It doesn't say so on the attached is just the order, and the attached is the request with the department head signing off. In this case, the department head being the mayor.
Is it a point of order?
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, just, because we were in executive session, I don't want to say anything that's not appropriate. So I'd rather have the chair say what the chair has to say about, in your own words, what this case is about, to the extent we can, and then we can maybe have a discussion beyond that. But I don't want to say anything that's, privileged information, because we haven't taken a vote, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how to
I'll do my
characterize it.
best, and I'm looking at the
Yeah.
the attorneys from the law department just to keep me in check. But we had a discussion, executive session about a litigation pending the city of Holyoke that involves the Holyoke Police Department. An incident that involves, at the time, a juvenile and the, I believe it's the parents of a juvenile that filed the litigation itself. There's been negotiations and ongoing discussion on this case. At one point, the attorney for, I always get this confused, the attorney for the plaintiff was asking for $1 million. Through negotiations, I believe there was one mediation hearing and other negotiations, and where we stand now, a settlement offer is with the mayors in agreement, and if the city council approves the appropriation, is that $65,000 to, without admitting guilt, to settle this particular litigation. Without authorizing the appropriation for the mayor to go forward, it's difficult to release any of the other facts.
So, question for the chair. Number 2 and number 3, neither of them state in the order which one settlement they are for.
That, I can answer that, and very simply, is when you look at our budget, the line item that this is going into is a general line item, which is line item 19412-57630, where all settlement, not all, but for this type of settlement and claim would come out of. There is no specific amount. We have asked to be able, well, in this case, it's because there's not enough money in the line item to make this settlement. If the money was there, the mayor could do the settlement without coming to us. We're being asked to put enough money into that line item so that the mayor can settle it.
Can I? There's
Yeah,
two-
when Counselor Sullivan's done, yeah.
Because the original agenda had 265,000, and
Oh.
this new agenda has a 25,000 second.
I apologize. Thank you, Counselor Murphy, and if Counselor Sullivan can finish, because what we're on is item number 2. This is correct. 65 is correct in item number 2. I will explain item number 3 in a minute. Counselor Sullivan?
Is there a different agenda I should be looking at?
Yes.
Yes, no, the agenda has a typo, and I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, mine's got 65 for both.
Yeah.
No, I understand, that's a typo, but, all right, I'll explain it now.
By the way, that's the
It
third
was-
agenda, though.
It was brought to my attention over the weekend that on the agenda, item number 3 is listed on the agenda as $65,000. Received by the full city council, and the order that we're acting on is $25,000. It's a typo on the agenda only. The original order, which on the original agenda for the full city council, was 25, and that's what that's what we will be acting on when we come to item number 3.
Now it's clear. Now I've got the right agenda.
Well, that's agenda number 3.
Yeah, but back on item number 2, it is 65,000.
Hey, we're all learning here. It's all good.
We're going by the posted agenda, because that's what we have to do.
Good idea.
Okay, so well, nothing simple about these, but what we're doing is, if we authorize this, if we vote to authorize the $65,000, we then report to the full city council that the reason we're asking to agree to allow the mayor to transfer $65,000 out of stabilization to legal claims is for the suit that we did in Councilor McGee's order. We did have discussion on, and at that point, we could get into more details. But if we choose for different reasons, and financial transfers are not just about where they're going, where they're coming from. And this is coming from stabilization, which is part of, according to the mayor, the $750,000 that we put in stabilization in lieu of no free cash this year. Any further discussion on the motion?
I made a motion, so I'm just.
And the chair will,
Well, I'll just make can I?
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah. Is, just through the chair to the law department, is it okay to say the forum in which this was being litigated? Okay, so I just wanted to, is it okay to say that the number of officers that were involved? I'm just trying to flesh out some of the detail. I'm not saying I want to say it, but it's what, so I just want it to be known that this is a federal trial. So that's all. So this is a federal trial. I just under discussion. I have a problem with this being stabilization, but the fact is, we all know that, because this is a unique year, that if we'd had free cash, this would have been coming from free cash. This is a specific department, it's the Holyoke Police Department that was being sued. Well, we all know what kind of stressful job that our officers are under, constant pressure to do the best they can. I think that what we heard from the chair is that the plaintiff's attorney started out with a home run ball. We also are understanding that there was, over the course of time, settlements and mediation brought it down to this amount. It's likely that this case would have been a much more costly case in terms of trial preparation. I don't want to really say much more than that because I don't really want to step on anybody's toes. It would have been a much more costly case. I, for one, would generally not vote for this, but seeing how these are kind of exigent situation, I am going to vote that we recommend it. I'm looking forward to the discussion at full city council, whenever that is, next week, I think, on it. But I think we should move it forward to the full city council. I think, and the last thing I want to say, and is it okay if I say when the settlement dates were, when the settlement was signed off through the chair to the law department? It's not okay. No, that's okay. That's why I'm asking the question. Okay. All right. So there you go.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Bartley. Any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, Chair will call a vote. All those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Yay. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the vote carries 3-1 with 1 abstention. Item number 3, again, item number 3 on the agenda is a typo. The actual order on item number 3 is introduced under my name, that there be an appropriation by transfer in fiscal year 2020 of $25,000, and that would be from stabilization to legal claims. Take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. This, again, is a discussion that took place in executive session of pending litigation. Same rules as we did for item number 2. This litigation, however, is not the Holyoke Police Department. It was against the City of Holyoke to an incident pertaining to the Department of Public Works. It involves an employee. This one goes back much further than the last litigation. It goes back to somewhere around 2010 is when the litigation began. And there was a period of time where this was in-house after being, the use of a outside attorney was negated or suspended, and then it came back to an outside attorney who was present with us this evening. And our discussion was the history of this ongoing case. It involved a injury on duty, involved some workman's comp, but the litigation was about at a point in time when the employee was deemed not able to return to work by the department management. A termination took place, and then an MCAD suit was filed, and the negotiations have been with MCAD, both with the outside attorney representing the City of Holyoke. At one time, the request by the plaintiff was for $250,000. The agreement the mayor has agreed to with negotiations that have taken place more recently would be for $50,000. However, $25,000 in 2 consecutive fiscal years is also part of the agreement. Therefore, the initial request of $25,000 is before us. Again, stabilization to legal claims. I do have to ask a quick question to the law department. This is on the appropriations, because this city council could vote for the $25,000 for this year. If the city council of the next fiscal years votes against the $25,000, what happens?
Well, when we put in our budget for legal claims and damages, we would take into mind that we have the settlement on the table. I believe there is another settlement that we've been carrying over for a few years. I think that one will be ending this year.
And I'm not to say that, the next city council wouldn't agree to that, but it's a possibility. And obviously, you have not been to one of our budget hearings. Just food for thought. Just want you to keep that in mind.
If you agree to a settlement, you have to agree to the whole thing, basically.
I understand, but if you really look at what we're doing, we're only voting on $25,000 with the understanding there'll be $25,000 in the consecutive fiscal year. Okay, So that was the gist of it. Certainly, if we vote to go forward on this one, more details can and will come out to what we can release. I thank, both our law department staff attorneys and our outside counsel for briefing us this evening. And I think, I know some of us have heard enough to understand. Me, in my case, I'll start if no one else wants to talk. I'm in agreement with the settlement because of the circumstances of the longevity of this suit taking place back in 2010. The fact that it was actually, I believe, 2013 when the MCAD made a ruling, and I believe it was more recently that our outside counsel was able to negotiate the amount of that ruling down to the $50,000. The point of that we could possibly win this at trial is part of what is part of the discussion. But if we don't win that trial, the employee would have the ability to look for retro pay back to 2010. And the cost of litigation to date has been $40,000. An additional trial cost of litigation would be an additional $30,000 to $40,000 estimated, and with the potential liability of $250,000 if we had to pay retro salary and benefits. Other than that, is there any discussion? Counselor Sullivan?
Yep. So I'm, as we have previously discussed, not in agreement with the settlement, and I would not want to do it out of stabilization. There are find other departments, find other sources for this if the mayor so chooses to settle this one. As I know, we can't negotiate the settlements, but if that's how strongly I feel about this, you ought to look somewhere else besides stabilization to settle it. I don't believe this is fair to the city. I think in the long run, despite I understand the costs of continuing litigation, stuff like that, but it opens the door to more and more and more frivolous suits, and the option to settle those and settle those and settle those. And in the long run, over the course of years, it will cost us more than $30,000 or $40,000 or whatever the continuing cost of litigating this one is.
Any other discussion? And I appreciate, if there's no other discussion, I do appreciate Counselor Sullivan's point. Oftentimes we'll take the same point as that. Just the difference, as I explained to me, is the longevity of this hanging out there for several years makes a difference to me, where I think we're exposed to more liability than usual. And I think under the circumstances, I believe settlement is the correct action. Counselor Bartley.
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. Chair. I generally like to make up at least some kind of remark to say why I'm going to vote the way I vote before I take the vote. The only problem is with this is being an executive session. I mean, I have to say I really appreciate what Councilor Sullivan has to say. I echo the comments. My only remark is that this has been such a long time pending matter. You almost hate to handcuff the current department head because of what happened years ago, and that's not a knock against the former department head, because it sounded like what we heard is the former department head did the best he could with this case. Although, when facts come out about it, and hopefully they will soon, to have something, a gap that happened, and I'm not going to explain what the gap was, but it was a significant gap in the litigation history. I mean, how does that occur? Is I mean, really bizarre, and especially when it's our understanding if we took this on from the jump, we might have had a different result. I'll leave it at that. And I know if anybody's listening to this, and what is he talking about? He's like talking in riddles. It's only because I'm relying on information that I heard in executive session, and it's still an executive session. And that's the hang up. And now we have settlements signed off by the mayor. We can't say when they were signed off by the mayor. But our budget position is different. So it's like, how do we explain ourselves in our votes, Mr. Chairman, on this when we're really relying on information that we can't divulge, and it makes it hard. It makes it hard for me to vote on it, and it makes it hard for the public to understand it. But seeing how I think we should move this on to the full city council, I'm going to vote in the affirmative to move it forward.
Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thought on this is, to go along with this transfer, I heard in executive session the amount of years that this was going on. I realized the work that our law department and the outside counsel have done. And she also stated if we took this on back in 2008 or whatever, that we should have took it on right away. But it's been a lag in time. This sort of got lost in the away in the abyss, and we got it back. And from going to $250,000 down to $50,000 settlement, and breaking up in 2 years, I feel comfortable with that, breaking this up. And I am in favor of taking this. Normally it would come out of free cash. I'm in favor of taking this from the stabilization fund to help pay this portion of this lawsuit to this individual.
Any further discussion? Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, kind of to echo what Councilor Bartley had spoken about a lot of times. Not a lot of times. We always want to explain why we're voting a certain way, and that's pretty much what we do. However, not getting into a lot of great details, and they will come out obviously when this case is settled. However, I'm going to take the recommendation of our outside counsel, Attorney Moore. Attorney Moore seems like a fighter. Seems like she would want to take on this case if it was the right thing to do. However, it's just going to cost the taxpayers money, and we have to look at this like it's our own checkbook. Everything we do, we should look at it like it's our own checkbook, and not settling this now would be not doing the right thing for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Sullivan?
And I'll just restate my position a little bit more clearly. $30,000 now, spending now, I don't feel would be a disservice to the taxpayers, because it's opening the door for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands more in settlements in the future by not fighting it.
Any, Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, in theory, I agree with Councilor Sullivan, but I think what we've heard, and I think we're all in agreement, we need to, if we're going to fight a settlement, we need to fight them in the early going, where we know we have a legitimate shot at winning. We know the cost of doing that, and I do think this should put everybody on notice that the City Council wants us to fight. If we've got a chance to win, let's fight right then and there. Let's get it done, and let's not settle. But in this particular case, we're 10 years later, which is certainly not something that we should be proud of, but we're 10 years later, and we've got a settlement, whether we like it or not, that the attorneys that represented us and the private counsel all feel that at this point we would be financially better off doing it this way, and that the potential liability is far greater than what we are doing. But I do think Councilor Sullivan's point should be taken as we move forward, that every case we have needs to be adjudicated as quickly as possible, and when we have a chance to win, we fight.
Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to adopt the transfer request. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Item number 4
Make a motion to take it off the table.
Second.
and 5, if we could.
Package.
Motion made to take 4 and 5 off the table. I did talk to the city solicitor who is not here for the acting city solicitor, is not here because of an illness that she's been battling for a little bit here, for a little bit of time, sorry. And she, at this point, is recommending that we just table both these items so she can brief us at the next available possible date. So if there's no Counselor Bartley?
I'll make the motion to table, but
Yeah.
I just want to, just so,
Second that.
well, hold on a
Just a second.
second, before I make the motion, I just want to say that the running tab, if we do approve the city council, the running tab will be 657.
Thank you. I got that. I'm not sure if everybody else got that?
Think so.
Okay, motion made,
Motion table.
motion made and seconded at the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? Ladies, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
640 minus 750, or 750 minus 650.
Such a,
That's 90.
yes,
Not a lot.
no, I got the tab.
Got it?
You all better keep your own tab, because
I got a tab.
I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm just saying.
Are you off a
Tab
little
right
bit?
here, Bartley, 2 beers.
Mr. Leahy's gonna blame me for this. Mr. Leahy, yeah.
I'm
go,
just
man.
teasing.
Yeah, you better be using it. I can't ask. Hopefully my computer can.
Moving on to item number 6. Introduced under my name, this is an order that under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council accepts the provisions of the South Holyoke Homes Project Grant and authorizes the establishment of a fund and/or other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Motion to take off the table for discussion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. We have now joining us our Planning Director, Economic Development Director, Marcus Marrero, and Marcus, does it make sense for you to give us a explanation?
Give one of those, Marcos?
And then we'll open up the question and answers.
Marcos, can I get one of those?
Thank you, sir.
You didn't bring one for me, did you? All right, all right.
Thank you.
You could give it to me after.
You can check me, whatever, I forget. Thank you. So before you is 2 documents. One is an award letter that states the total amount of the grant, $6,566,000. The second is a site map that shows the streets that would undergo improvements with that monies. It's you'll recognize them as the streets immediately abutting Carlos Vega Park in South Holyoke. So the backstory to this grant is that this goes to support the South Holyoke Homes project. It is a project being led by the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority under Area 8 of the city's urban renewal plan, which was approved in late 2012 and early 2013. It's meant to be a transformative housing development project around the park with an emphasis on home ownership. So there will be some, we foresee some rental component to it. But from the beginning, the interest has been to inject more home ownership in the neighborhood. South Holyoke in particular has over 90% of all units are rentals. And so we feel that, well, the city has felt, not just us as an office, but what's been codified in the plan is to provide more stability to the neighborhood with home ownership opportunities. We foresee at this point having a phase development on the housing units. The reality is that there isn't a strong and streamlined incentive structure at the state and federal levels for affordable home ownership. And so we want to make sure that we are promoting home ownership that provides a lot of opportunity for people in the neighborhood and around the neighborhood. But none of that development would be possible without significant infrastructure upgrades of the streetscapes and the subsurface infrastructure there. We applied for this grant, which was pretty bold. The amount is rather large, and we got almost 10% of the state allocation in this round. This is the most competitive grant that the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development has. We did it this round because we knew with the CSO separation work that you're probably all familiar with. You've voted on those bonds. We were in a position to do this cheaper now that we were opening up the streets. So we expect to be in construction by late this year, sometime in the fall, and be done by 2022. In the meantime, we're hoping to have a project lined up for construction early next year, in the first phase of the project, and thereafter phasing potentially 2 more phases of housing around the park. So it all starts with infrastructure. A little bit of logistics on the MassWorks. It's a pretty well-known grant in Holyoke. We've used it for the train station. We've used it for the infrastructure work around Lyman Terrace. One was a $4 million that actually was, MassWorks was less than $4 million. It was like just a little bit over 3 for the train station. It was a little bit over 5 for Lyman Terrace. There's no match requirement, and it is on a reimbursement basis. We request reimbursement on a monthly basis, or as soon as we get invoices from contractors, right? So if one month we may not submit an invoice because we have nothing to, reimbursement because we have nothing to reimburse, like in the winter months. So work will be coordinated on the field by the city engineer. He's the main person for the project there, but in concert with my office and with the housing authority, because the housing authority is the master developer for the housing project, and they have in fact paid for the design of the streetscape, which has been coordinated all throughout with the city engineer and other city agencies, such as the fire department. It's very important for the fire apparatus to be able to get in and make the turns. So that's the overview of the grant. Happy to take questions.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Welcome. I just wanted to remind you, and hopefully we can get this, and hopefully we get this for all of the grants that we have. Councilor Bartley and I some time ago filed an order, which was approved, that after every, not only your department, but every department that gets a grant, that we get a final report, kind of like the demographics or, the numbers, so we know what worked, what didn't work. And so, that helps you guys out because you guys know what's happening in, the police department, fire department, but it would also help us out as well when we're making decisions. Generally, I never vote against free money. I don't think that I have. Sometimes matching. But is that something you can do for this? And is that something you can get all the data and so we can disaggregate it?
Yeah, I think this was a point that was brought up at the last finance committee meeting that I was in. I think I said if it's an ordinance that I have to do it, then I will do it.
Yeah, I remember saying that. Yeah.
Since then, we've only had one grant period close, and by contract so we can't do more expenditures after December 31st, but the contract actually ends in March. So that's a report that we're providing
Appreciate it.
now.
Thank you.
Most grantors require some sort of reporting anyway, so happy to provide that so you know the outcomes.
Yeah, that's what the police department said. It said that generally they have to provide.
Yes, something, and if they don't require it, then
Great.
I'm sure we could put something together.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Councilor Bartley.
Marcos, thank you for being here. Thanks for the summary, as always. You're gonna have to educate me a little bit here on this. So we got there's been an approval for $6.56 million, and it was you read the letter, clearly they're saying that Holyoke did very well. So we need to compliment you on that. And you say it's for infrastructure for the area around Vega Park. So what are we're rebuilding streets? What we're putting in bike lanes? For this $6.5 million roughly, are any homes being built at this with those funds? I just want to get a little broader picture of what's being done with the money.
Sure. The money is strictly for the public right-of-way when I say infrastructure. So that is road reconstruction from the subsurface up. So not just repaving, but resetting curb, providing a new design, which is actually an order that will be before ordinance committee to approve any amendments to the flow of traffic there. Resetting where parking goes, where the bike lanes go, plantings where the poles are, because some of the poles and the wires can conflict with the treescape and water access lines to the parcels.
So are the telephone poles going underground?
What we're more likely to do is we're gonna try to put the poles in the alleyway, because putting them underground would be very expensive. Not just because it's not just the wiring at that point. At that point, you're then creating the city, right? Like if the city said we want to put it underground, then we would be responsible for making the connections underground to the building as well. So we wouldn't have enough money for that, but we could put the connections still overhead just through the alleyway.
Let me ask it a slightly different way. Once this infrastructure is complete, or well, you tell me the timing on it, but at some point, I heard what you said about home ownership. This will lead to the development, and I assume by Holyoke Housing Authority is going to be the lead developer.
Mm-hmm.
Will develop, 10 homes, 150 homes?
The first phase that we're conceiving being able to get the funding would be probably 12 units of rentals on the northeastern corner. The second phase would likely be 20 units of sort of like row house type development. Those would be home ownership. The third phase is still undefined because it would be later on, but probably a taller building for rentals.
Okay, so I heard what you said earlier about 90% are rentals in South Holyoke. And I think what I heard you just say there is that potentially 2 of the 3 development phases will be to develop more rentals. 1 of the 3 will be to develop townhouse units, which may or may not be rentals.
Well, the first phase, we want to get a beachhead in, right? And the challenge is getting subsidies for home ownership in the neighborhood that would have market penetration, right? You can't build $300,000 homes and expect that they will be purchased going in. So we're looking to transform the neighborhood and create a market for home ownership that's accessible to folks who want to live in South Holyoke. So the beachhead would be 12 really high quality rental units on the northeast corner. What we're conceiving, remember, we haven't gone through permitting. We haven't completed the design of the home. So I'm giving you our best estimation of where we think we will be able to garner the tax credits and other subsidies at the state and federal level. The second phase would be likely 20 units of home ownership.
Yeah, and you said townhouse style units.
Yes, very likely.
And the third phase?
A more traditional tower for rentals.
How many units? Sorry, Council.
I don't have that number.
Well,
No, for some of this stuff, we're still, frankly, we're still doing community engagement. We're still doing stakeholder engagement. But, normally, in my initial conversations with the OHED on this MassWorks, is my intent was not to go for it this round. If we didn't, we were already tearing up the streets and separating out the combined sewer overflows. So we were faced with a situation where we should really do this now and only pay for it once, right? Even though we don't have a full housing project designed. We are in the early stages, if you will, on the housing project design.
okay, so let me just ask you a different way then. So when, so the types of contractors that are going to come in under this MassWorks grant would be what types of contractors? And I assume the bidding would be coordinated by our procurement office?
Yes.
Okay, and so what types of contractors can we expect to be awarded funds under this $6.5 million?
You want examples of types of contractors? They're general contractors that would work in the right of way. So this would be similar to, what's the firm that worked at Lyman Terrace?
Gillier?
Gilliher, right. Gilliher did all the streetscapes and piping and electricity under the road and the sidewalks, the crosswalks. And it's reconstructing the road down from the base up. And in the case of pipes, it's putting that pipe work even under the roadway. So, that type of large-scale contractor.
And this is pipes for water and sewer type of pipes?
Yeah, I think the CSO is already paid for, but there are more water lines that we need to add if we want to have housing there, because the water lines are too thin there, particularly if we want to have, you know, sprinklers and that kind of stuff. We need more pressure.
Okay, I mean, so you need more pressure in units that are rental units, but what, when we're looking at what, we want to create home ownership, right? So,
Well, sure, but just this, the way the water access works in the area, the pipes are too thin, so we need to replace them. We need to put more water into that neighborhood.
Is that part of the project already, water department's doing?
If I can.
Yeah.
If I understand it, and let me also, because I'll rebut a few of the things that Marcos has said, but with kindness, of course. But we are trying to coordinate the sewer project, the water project, gas and electric project, doing the road repaving. It's trying to all be coordinated. We got this grant, and it's going to let us, we're not going to save a lot of money, but it's going to help us coordinate it so we're not doing this after they've already replaced the sewer lines and then we're digging it back up. And it's trying to make it, as I understand it, so it's going to be basically 1 year of somewhat inconvenience for the people in South Holyoke, so that it's not going to be, you're going to be inconvenienced this year, and then you're going to be inconvenienced next year, because now we're going to have the third project, and you're going to be inconvenienced on that. And then once this is done, the goal would be, or actually, as this is in place, the goal would be to start some of the housing projects. And I'll comment more about the housing projects after.
Okay. And I interrupted Councilor Bartley, but I just wanted to make sure the water was on the same.
And the thing with the water lines is when we go in with the plan to the state to say what we want to pay for is, you know, obviously we talk to the water department first and we ask them what are you planning to do, up to when, right, up to where, and so they share with us what they're planning on doing, and we say, okay, well, what gap do we have to cover to get to the areas that we need to bring in water? So we're putting that basically on the state grant.
thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
So does any of this 6.5 million in any way offset some of the water main bonding or stormwater separation ones we've already put through? I mean, none of these streets are part of what we put through just a few short weeks ago?
It doesn't supplant any of the bond. The work would happen in concert with that work. So we didn't put any line item, for example, linear feet of piping that would have been in the estimate for the CSO bond. That wouldn't have been part of the estimate that we put forward, right? So this 6.566 is based on a design that the engineers go and they put on. It's a long table with line items, and there's a pipe of this type, linear feet times X units, that's a certain amount. And they put curbing and cement and asphalt and all those things. So there wasn't anything in that other bond that this is supplanting. This is in addition to the work that the CSO separation is doing in South Holyoke.
All right, so let me rephrase it a little different. So will there be new water main replacement going in addition to, as an
Yes. extension
of what was already being planned?
Yes, there will be additional things than what was already being planned, yes.
All right, I'm at a little bit of a loss. I'm familiar with these streets, bike lanes.
Mm-hmm.
This is, what other bike lanes throughout the city are they going to connect with?
Well, this is the issue. Anytime you create a network, the problem is there isn't a network, so why should we build a network, right? That's a standard question. And so someone had to have the first fax machine and the first cell phone. Those are networks as well. The first roadways also didn't connect to any other roadways. And so bike lanes, you build them out as you redesign and you rebuild the streets. Otherwise, you would never build any bike lane because they never connect to anything.
He's talking about the history of Holyoke, where Whiting Farms Road was $1 million road to nowhere.
Yeah. I get that.
Sure, that's what I meant.
But
Still went nowhere
It's interesting, yeah.
through farmland.
even still, we're dealing on some pretty narrow streets to begin with, parking on both sides of those streets already an issue, and we're going to try and add bike lanes in there?
Well, there's going to be a whole other discussion in ordinance committee around what the actual design is. We put what you have in front of you, I would say it was 60, what Time Bond called a 60% design. It's already suffering changes. Just to call out one of them, you can see a series of bump outs throughout the streetscape, which we're going to be eliminating because it's actually a problem for cost control with stormwater runoff. So we could probably save some money there by just eliminating 3 or 4 of those bump outs throughout the segment. So the design is changing a bit. We're running the template with the newest fire truck that we have that's a little bit longer than we'd anticipated back in the late summer, early fall. So some of this stuff is going to change, and that's it's actually been continued already in ordinance once, and we have a request to continue it from tomorrow's agenda, precisely because we're still undergoing design. So that, you know, there's the best person to answer very in-depth design questions will be Bob, and I'm going to be happy to join him. But not everything that you see in the paper right now still is as it is now.
Yep. So my only, to echo Councilor Leahy, I'm not going to throw away free money. On behalf of the Baker-Polito administration, right? This is the same Baker-Polito administration that a few short weeks ago left us in a divisive vote here in the city and couldn't find one more dime for us for something we really, really, really need in here, which isn't more bike lanes, more treescape, or anything like that, new schools. Same people couldn't find us a dime, just found us $6.5 million. That's my only comment on the whole thing.
That's only editorial, you don't have to respond.
Only editorial, you don't have to respond.
Following up real quick, then I'll give Councilor Murphy the floor. The money that did Heritage Street and Dwight Street and,
Right.
is that MassWorks too?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I should remember that. Yes, that was a relatively small MassWorks. That was 1.3 million.
I'll ask the question I didn't ask when we approved that. Are there any one-way streets that are different than what they are now here?
Yes, and that's part of the ordinance. That's what's in ordinance right now.
No,
the
I know,
design
but
for approval.
for accepting the grant, I think we kind of giving us a heads up.
Yes. So
When I say one way, I'm not talking about Hamilton or Southeast, but like Sargent or maybe Hamilton, but is Sargent Street going to remain two-way?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure the ward counselor is on top of this, but knowing what I mean is this neighborhood too is just like what I described to you and the city engineer the other day, is a series of one-ways that were designed a long time ago for a purpose, and flow of traffic becomes part of it. That's all.
Yep.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what you have in front of you, and certainly this is still in the working stages, but I know the fire department has already contacted me, so the original plan that was laid out needs to have some fire protection adjustments so that streets will not be as narrow as they were going to make them. So, and part of that is some of the bunker away from trying to create a little bit less speeding, I think, and also some of the bike lanes. I don't think we're going to have quite as many as were in there. But as far as the, and it's also we're trying to coordinate all this because we're going to be having something coming in across the Bartley file of the order with regard to the Jackson Sewer Project, and that's going to be trying to tie all this in so that we're trying to do the projects more efficiently, and this money is to help us get the areas that we're going to have the housing and kind of improve the infrastructure around them. But just if you can take a look at the map that he gave you there, and I'm an advocate of more home ownership and less apartment dwelling units. But I do think what they're talking about, the very first apartment building would be on the corner of Hamilton and Southeast Street, where there used to be a 12, actually it used to be a 16-unit kind of square complex. They're going to make it a 12-unit complex, and I think that is their first goal, because I think the funding looks like that source is more readily available. That's also a corner next to another corner which has had some problems. So getting that done, I think, can really start to solidify that the neighborhood's having improvements. But after that, if you go down Clemente Street, including the parking lot that the Degree Church now owns, that we're going to try to get done, that should all be housing, either single or duplex homes. Southeast Street, with the exception of that corner on Hamilton Street going to Sargent Street. Those rest should be homes. I'm also encouraging as we go along that the Sargent Street and Southeast Street on the south side not be considered apartments. We have homes right next to it, and I think it would make far more sense to continue the homes and go right down there with homes. So it's still being discussed. They are still having meetings with, to doing things, and if you noticed, all the alleyways also have things that they're putting in, partly for the poles, but also trying to make them, and I've cautioned about this at a DGR meeting regarding having too many people have their driveways off the alley, because then what happens when you got problems with the alley? And I know that is being considered as they try to figure out how we do this, but my goal would be that we end up with far more homes, residential units than apartment residential units. And part of that, I hope, will be for some people that have been living in apartments in South Holyoke that will have a chance to move up and have their own home. But also bringing additional people. And one of the things, we have to have economic diversity as well as just overall diversity. But if we bring money and economic diversity to that area, I think you can see an offshoot on the businesses on Main Street and Cabot Street, because people will have some additional spending money, which right now, to a great extent, we don't have. So, I mean, it is free money, and the purpose, I kind of thought it was a lot of money, and I'm certainly not a contractor or anybody that understands that to a great extent, but the goal is to try to make it a more friendly neighborhood, a more open neighborhood, and I think what they're working hard at is to get that done. So I would, I know I'm pretty confident we'll approve this and not turn down the money, but, and also, I'll definitely try to keep, I know we're going to change the ordinance that we did file, or I did file at the engineer's request, because there have been changes because of public safety, so, and there'll probably be several other changes before we're done.
I think a fine explanation of the project, Councilor Murphy, and I think a lot of this leads into what the Housing Authority is doing, and I've said it to you, I've said it to Mac Lanville, those 20 home ownership townhouses could double. And the long-term success of the housing part of this project, to me, is on how much home ownership can be created. Not saying we shouldn't be creating some rental, but the more home ownership, we've seen this throughout the city, the better success long-term. But as far as the infrastructure and a fine explanation from our planning board director, I certainly think the money is money that we can use. I think it'll complement the water department and the gas and electric, because it'll save them money on tearing up the streets, but more important, save them money on resurfacing the streets, because the final resurfacing will be part of this.
That is true. That's one area where it's in a way supplanting, because they don't have to finish it to final quality. If they have to cover it up for a season or something like that, then they don't have to do it there is a little bit of savings there.
Marcus, when we accept these type of grants, is there a contract that is signed by the mayor?
Yes, I didn't. It was long, and I didn't have.
We have one attached.
Okay, you do have it.
Because
Yes.
I know we're not voting on the contract. We're voting on the grant and the acceptance. But the mayor has agreed to the grant, obviously, because it's in front of us.
Yes.
And the contract is standard form contract by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Correct.
Make a motion to approve it?
Motion has been made and seconded to approve. Recommend to the full city council to accept said grant and all the resources that come with it. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Marcus, thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
And, job well done.
Make a motion to take up item number 7 off the table.
Item number 7 comes in under my name, as all requests do. Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. The City Council accepts the BARR Foundation Clean Energy Transition Grant, 19-82201. Grant and authorizes the establishment of a fund and or other method for the accounting of receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with said grant. Motion was to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Marcus, you want to lead us through this one?
All right, Councilor Murphy's really testing my memory today because I didn't remember to print enough copies, so I don't have the documents in front of me. What you have before you is the award letter by the Bar Foundation to the City of Holyoke for $275,000, and immediately after that, I think it's the contract form that.
Can you just explain to us what the bar is?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. The Bar Foundation is a private philanthropic organization. One of their, I can't speak for all their priorities, but one of their priorities is tackling climate change. And so it's in that category from their climate program that they are funding the City of Holyoke. We applied to the Bar Foundation to do an energy transition plan, pretty bold one, to decarbonize the City of Holyoke, the energy that it consumes from its building stock. So this isn't about cars. This is about electricity and heating, and to a certain extent, by extension, electrify the City of Holyoke through its heating. Right, it's electrified for light, but most of our heating comes from fossil fuels, and there's clearly going to be a good amount of energy efficiency measures identified in the energy transition plan. This goes much further than the prior energy plan that the city had, which was as part of the Green Communities program. That was, the city joined in, I think it was 2011, just before my time. There was a goal to reduce 20% the city buildings' energy consumption. This would be a plan to get to full transition. Clearly, that wouldn't be something that we could achieve in 3 years or 5 years. This would be a long-term plan with goalposts going throughout, and projects that we could start executing on in the short and medium term. It puts the city in a leading position to tackle climate change and reap economic benefits from it, particularly in the short term and in the form of energy savings. The city is very attractive to philanthropic money right now. If you look at the space of energy transition, and big cities like New York City and San Francisco, the things that they say they want to do, it's actually pretty hard to do those in big cities that they don't even have their own utility, right? It's a private utility, so they don't necessarily have the levers for it. We are a small city. We have a scale in which you can tackle complex problems, and there's enough complexity where if you can do it here, you can replicate it in other cities. And there is also the levers here. We have a municipal utility that has an interest in reducing our expenditures, particularly in heating, because we are constrained, particularly in natural gas. We have an interest in reducing our emissions, not just for climate change's sake, but also the health effects of localized emissions, such as from the burning of oil in heaters. And we have public corporations like the Housing Authority, right, that we could coordinate more closely on a large inventory of housing for energy efficiency. I should also say the Holyoke Gas and Electric, as you know, is vertically integrated, so they control not just production of energy, but also its distribution and sale. Many of these recommendations will result, we foresee, in investment in our building stock, which, as I said, we expect to improve health outcomes and at least sustain, if not improve, property values. This grant for $275,000 was complemented by the Bar Foundation with another $125,000 that they awarded neighbor to neighbor. The expectation is that we will work in concert on this plan. Neighbor to neighbor will be doing the lion's share of the engagement work in the community. There's no match requirements on this. There's initial payment that the city receives at the beginning, at the outset, of $150,000. And then in September, we can access the other 125. So it's a hybrid. It's not strictly reimbursement or strictly payment upfront. The funds will be used primarily for local capacity. To be honest, our plate's pretty full locally in my office. We're going to be using this to hire technical consultants that will be needed to design a path forward with the some which will be cutting edge technology, some of it which is not necessarily cutting edge, but it's just how do you implement the right incentive programs, for example, how do you scale them for a community like Holyoke? How do we most optimally use the Holyoke Gas and Electric's portfolio for energy incentives and other investments? And some of it will be for someone to actually coordinate the multiple stakeholders that will be working on this together, writing the plan. So it'll be a temporary person during the duration of this grant program, of this planning process, I should say. Feel like there was something else I was going to say and I totally forgot, but I'm sure I'll remember when I get a question.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you, Marcos. I just had a couple of quick questions in regards to who's going to be in charge of this? Is this going to be the gas and electric?
The grant will be under my department.
Under your department? Now, is gas and electric for this?
Yes, and now naturally, now I remembered what else I was going to say. So we're working with the Holyoke Gas and Electric and Neighbor to Neighbor, as I said. We're working with two other partners on this. One is the Conservation Law Foundation that's providing us technical assistance as they're familiar with other energy transition plans throughout the country. Another quasi-philanthropic organization that we were able to attract to work more directly with the Holyoke Gas and Electric is the Rocky Mountain Institute. So they're a mix of philanthropic, but also like they can provide services to government, business, and nonprofit, and so they're really cutting edge in the field, and they've offered their services pro bono. As I said, Holyoke is a really interesting testing point. If we can show that we can do it here, we become the model for the nation. So we've garnered a lot of positive attention from organizations that are working directly with the city and with the gas and electric.
So, is this where the city's going to focus? Is this where the direction's going? Are we? I mean, I know I read the mayor's statement in regards to natural gas, and then I read the opposing side of it with Mr. Healy and his essay that he wrote. So, is this the way we're going?
With regards to what specifically?
Just so the people at home. So we're not going to talk about natural gas. We're not going that way. It's all going to be.
We can talk about natural gas. What we have right now with natural gas. Let's look at that. Expanding that for a minute. We are constrained with the capacity for natural gas in the city at the moment. So
it doesn't have to be though, right? Because the pipeline that goes from goes to Pennsylvania, it goes to Western Mass, to New York, New Hampshire.
We don't have another source of natural gas right now, and so no one can move a magic wand and make natural gas happen. The proposal that was before the city, at best, was 2 years out for construction. So I want to make sure we're all even set in our expectations that it wasn't like the constraint was something that could immediately be overcome. That was, at best case, would have provided a temporary solution for the gas constraint. When you look then through the specter of climate change, understanding that the greenhouse gases that we're emitting are going to need actions at all levels, and that actions will happen whether we take them or not, that will impose a cost on us, whether environmental or economic or both. When you look at our portfolio of consumption of natural gas, we've actually been constrained on the pipeline for a long time. Our capacity on the pipeline is around 11,000 decatherms, but our total consumption is around 19,000 decatherms. The balance is being provided by import of liquid natural gas, which is almost 4 times as expensive. So the natural gas solution is not a sustainable solution, economically or environmentally. And so what this plan is aiming to put us on is, I would dare to say, at times unfamiliar territory in Holyoke, which has suffered a lot of economic suffering over the years, to be first in the nation, to be a model for the nation. So we can make smart investments, and we expect investments that will garner other support through philanthropy and other means. Because if you can prove that the investment works, but just there's a overcomable gap, right, by state and federal policy, then philanthropy is really interested in saying, show me that proof point. Show me what it is, right? So we're not overextending ourselves locally. That wouldn't be fair. But we could really show how you decarbonize and electrify.
Okay, so hypothetically, say if the Holyoke Mall wasn't there and today they wanted to go there, how would that be? Would that be electricity then?
I don't understand the hypothetical question.
Hypothetically, how would it be heated?
Well, the Holyoke Mall is already there, so we're not taking away gas from the Holyoke Mall.
That's why I said hypothetically it wasn't there and it was to be built today. How would it be? What would we use for an energy source?
Well, if it wasn't there today, then we wouldn't have the moratoria probably, because there would be all this capacity on gas. And
Okay, say if I'm going to build a building at Montagne today that's the size of the mall, what would I use for energy?
Well, you could use electricity. You could use propane. And there's a whole series of construction projects that are happening now that haven't stopped because that there was a moratoria. So,
What about the one up near the mall? The apartment buildings.
the apartment buildings that garnered a zone change, right? And I understand that one of the owners has said because there's a gas moratorium they haven't pursued it. This is the problem with that logic. The owner bought the parcel for $600,000 and is arguing that it is useless because there's no gas, but started marketing it at $1.2 million. So I would say economically that makes no sense. If they think that it is useless land, that you can't develop anything, then you would be selling it for equal or less.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Counselor Sullivan.
Yep, thank you. So, Marcos, first I'm going to read from the terms of the grant. Grant funds may not be used to carry on propaganda. Now I read here, the city of Holyoke and Neighbor to Neighbor establish a partnership. Also, the city of Holyoke and Neighbor to Neighbor have established an inclusive governance structure. Is this the same Neighbor to Neighbor group that barged into the offices of the Holyoke Gas and Electric and intimidated employees?
I don't know of that event that you're referencing.
Well, I think a lot of other people do. Are the same group that's opposed the replacement of the main?
They advocated against the expansion of natural gas pipeline in the region, yes.
So that's engaging in propaganda, campaigning against it.
We wouldn't be paying them to advocate against expansion of the gas pipeline because there is no gas pipeline proposal through Holyoke right now.
What's
None of this money, in fact, is the $275,000 is for folks to it's for our own consultants and for our own folks to manage the program. Neighbor to Neighbor is funded separately through the Bar Foundation. This money is not for Neighbor to Neighbor.
It says here, we're going to establish a partnership with
Yes.
Neighbor to Neighbor.
Yes, that doesn't mean we're paying them.
And are they controlling where the funds go?
We control where the funds go. We're the fiscal agent.
They have no access to it or no control over where it goes.
None. Same fiscal controls that applies to all the money in the city of Holyoke.
Then why do we need a partnership with them?
Well, that's a good question. We need a partnership because, as I said earlier when I was describing the energy problem, the cheapest energy is the one you don't consume, right? So that means taking down the amount of energy you consume through energy efficiency measures, right? And when you're dealing with building stock in particular, you can't just, not effectively, just mandate improvements. You need absorption of and demand of programs to make energy efficiency improvements to the building stock. And so it is critically important, and we see this throughout the country, it's critically important to have the buy-in of the population. Most people are not as engaged as the people who are in this room or even watching right now, right? Everyone just goes around living their lives trying to make ends meet. And so we have to go the extra mile to engage people to make sure that we're designing the right incentive programs that will absorb any investment we want to make in this so that we actually move the needle. And so Neighbor to Neighbor is an outfit that is equipped to even do, door knocking, surveying, doing community charrettes at a bigger scale in the short timeline with the funding that they're getting from the Bar Foundation. So it's in our interest to work cooperatively with them and others that know how to mobilize interest, get input to make this the best plan possible with a broad array of representation at these community meetings.
Well, there's no question they know how to mobilize people. It's just how I've seen them mobilize people. And I'm very surprised. I hope the public is aware of what they did at the Holyoke Gas and Electric offices. That was shameful. And I am very concerned about who has established this inclusive governance structure and decision-making body. Where did this come from? And
We're working together with them. We're having working meetings.
so your office?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm here.
That?
Yep.
Marcus, the city's a fiscal agent. Your department is the lead for the accounting of the grant.
Yes.
And it looks like from listening to you, and thank you, a good portion of the $275,000 will be to pay a consultant and a coordinator in salary. Because the city is accepting the grant, are we taking the precautions that these are not going to be city employees?
If it is a city employee, it would be totally paid for, everything, even marginal benefits from the grant, everything. And that's why it's a big amount, because as you know, it's not just what the employee is getting in terms of salary, but anything else, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So everything would be taken out
I
of
was
it.
taking a step further, unemployment compensation.
Well, what we would be looking to do is taking everything from the grant, any.
But unemployment is, the city is self-insured. So what I'm trying to say is if you don't make them city employees, then the city would not be responsible for any unemployment claims down the road.
They have a time limit to make the unemployment claim. So we could budget that into this. I'm not saying they should or they shouldn't. The challenge that we have at this point is I don't know that we can get the amount of hours affordably from a consultant on this, because the type of folks that would have the setup to do a consulting over this amount of time would likely come from a bigger city and charge a bigger amount. Someone who is knowledgeable in the field, but willing to move here temporarily for a job may respond to a short-term employment, right? The bottom line is, one way or the other, we're going to make sure that everything comes out of this fund, and that's why it's $275,000. Because, well, that actually sounds like a lot for 18 months, but we're making sure that we're not using the city's income stream for this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Marcus. Thanks always for your great summary. I really appreciate you being here as always. Some of the verbiage, I just had a chance to, we just received this today, and that's okay, even though it's dated December 4th, 2019. Just received it 20 minutes ago, and so I did have a chance to skim through here. I'm just going to make these questions just to the chair, just the chair mainly. So I don't see any mention here of a Holyoke Gas and Electric in this proposal. Mr. Chairman, I see here an outcome which I really appreciate. The city of Holyoke has an action plan for being the first city in Massachusetts to reduce consumption of fossil fuel energy down to or near zero that is supported by durable, multi-stakeholder, community-driven support. Some of the goals in there are worthy, but we have one of the most innovative agencies in the Commonwealth, probably New England, in Holyoke Gas and Electric. No mention of that. Mr. Chairman, for a department head to say that the department head has no knowledge of a raid on another department, it was documented in meeting minutes. Now, whether or not it's covered by news media, that we have a dearth of news coverage, but in the meeting minutes last year, we all get the HG&E minutes, documented clearly the disruption to daily operations by the group neighbor to neighbor. The 40 to 50 of them stormed into 99 Suffolk Street. That is absolutely 100% verified and documented in HG&E meeting minutes. And I'm going to suggest through the chair that the department head speak to and confirm that with the manager of the HG&E. At best, Mr. Chairman, at best, until I get a confirmation from HG&E as to its involvement with this and its approval of this, at best, Mr. Chairman, I will vote to table this right now, pending that. At worst, Mr. Chairman, there is no way possible that I would vote to accept free money, a grant that's going to support a group like Neighbor to Neighbor. Furthermore, Mr. Chairman, reading the remarks in multiple publications by Dave Healy, former head of Time Bond, a professional engineer, relative to what the mayor of the city of Holyoke has done concerning natural gas consumption, how the moratorium that the mayor has put on, Mr. Chairman, on Earth Day, in my humble opinion, 100% politically motivated, has nothing to do with the economic drive or the environment of Holyoke, Massachusetts. Nothing, Mr. Chairman. 100% for political motivation. And now it sickens me to my core that I have to vote on this grant. I have to vote to possibly support a partnership with a group like Neighbor to Neighbor that took that action, an unmeritorious action, to storm a department, and I have a department head, Mr. Chairman, that claims no knowledge of it. I'm befuddled by that, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest through the chair that the department head talk to the executive of the city or talk to the manager of G&E, find out for itself, that department, what exactly happened. I, in good conscience, if Mr. Chairman, that the Neighbor to Neighbor raid did not happen, if, Mr. Chairman, that we had a possibility of a build-out with the expanded pipeline, and it's taking maybe an 8-inch main to a 16-inch main, and I know there's complications with other municipalities, I get it. But if we had a cooperation with other municipalities and with the vendor, Columbia Gas, to provide additional capacity to Holyoke, if all things being equal, I mean, as just a humble vote, a humble servant of Ward 3, I would absolutely support this. But that's not the reality we live in, Mr. Chairman. The reality is we had a mayor that took precipitous action, I'm just one person, in my opinion, had nothing to do with the city of Holyoke. Strictly politically motivated. Second of all, we have a group that raided a department, upset employees of the gas and electric, upset customers enough to merit a discussion in an HG&E meeting minutes that are documented on public record, and a department head that claims no knowledge of it. And this is the partnership that we're involved with Neighbor to Neighbor. Mr. Chairman, I will not vote for this tonight. I will vote to table it, and I won't make that motion because I know others want to make a comment. But at the time, I will vote to table it because I want to hear, Mr. Chairman, I want to hear from Mr. Lavelle and or any G&E commissioners about its opinion as to this. Because right now, I'm having my doubts about the veracity of some of the comments that were made. So pending confirmation directly from HG&E, now I won't vote to deny tonight, Mr. Chairman, unless we're of the opinion that we need to move this out tonight. I did see on here, my colleague noted the timetable on here looked like there's a payment that was pending for December of last year. I don't know if that timetable is going to cause a problem with this, or if we're under pressure to approve this because of that timetable. But right now, Mr. Chairman, I will not vote to move this out of committee other than to deny it. Thank you.
Marcus, we did receive this back in December 17th, and you and I talked and scheduled the meeting for purposes for January. What are there time constraints, or what are the time constraints?
We have 18 months to complete the project starting in January, so the clock is going, right? But if I may clarify my earlier remarks, I am aware verbally, because I don't receive reports from every department, that there was a demonstration in the Holyoke Gas and Electric lobby. What I have stated that I cannot attest to, because I don't know, it's the first time I hear it described that way, is intimidation, a raid, a storming. To me, that conveys something completely different than my understanding, which was there was a public demonstration, a political demonstration in the lobby. I am aware of that because I was verbally told. I do not regularly examine every commission's meeting minutes. So if I should be doing that, I apologize, but I haven't. The gas and electric is the most important constituent in this, and they're part of this partnership. As I described earlier, one of the partners that we got to this coalition was the Rocky Mountain Institute. They're providing services directly to the Holyoke Gas and Electric, as well as the Conservation Law Foundation and Bar Foundation that's providing funding. We have constant communication and meetings with them, as well as with neighbor to neighbor. So while I understand the hesitation of working with someone who may, particularly some councilors here, haven't agreed with, I would submit to you that that is part of the strength of this planning process, which is that people who have been on separate sides of the issue can come together, observe data objectively, and draw a path together that is tenable throughout the spectrum. Because the energy that we consume is beyond politics. I respect that you may want you to have the opinion of the Holyoke Gas and Electric. I have no issue with that. I don't expect that they will say anything different than what I'm saying here. They're part of a partnership. It's in their interest to reduce gas consumption and energy consumption, and that this just feeds into their long-term planning to be more renewable. As I think Councilor Leahy said, they're one of the most innovative utilities in the state. And so this only supports that. I wouldn't expect them to say anything different.
I think on the, I appreciate your comments on the neighbor and neighbor part. I think their goals may be well-intended, but sometimes their methods are inappropriate, or maybe that's not the correct way, incorrect. In terms of a protest, that's one thing. But to bring a protest inside a professional office, public office such as the gas and electric, there's no excuse for that. I don't care who they are. That is not a way to do business. That is not a way to protest. You know, there's plenty of room outside a building. There's plenty of public space that could have been used to get the same message across. However, the gas and electric to me is the important key part of this group of partners, as you call them, get together. And I think Councilor Bartley's question is that we just need to have some confirmation from management, and I would believe if the commission is on board with management would be helpful too. Councilor Sullivan?
You stated my concerns much more eloquently than I would have.
I beat you to it.
I would go along with Councilor Bartley until I hear from the management of the HG&E. I'd like, and I believe we've got a meeting scheduled each Monday for the next
We
few more
do.
weeks.
This
So,
is the easiest agenda we have of our next two meetings, if you want to put it in perspective. But yes, we will keep this moving forward.
But I'm ready to second the motion.
Well, there's no motion, hang on, because we're still in discussion.
Would it help the committee if HG&E provided something in writing?
No, we want to come in.
Yep.
At least I do.
I do too.
Third.
Okay, with availability, we can put this, if we don't redo our entire discussion, we can put this first on next Monday's agenda and still get it out for next Tuesday night for the full city council. If Jim or appropriate delegation for Jim could come in. Is that fair? Councilor Leahy had his hand up.
Yeah,
and
just,
then we'll-
very quickly. So, I literally just got this about a half hour ago, so I have to have some time to digest it. But if I could also have a copy of the grant itself, and also the budget that's outlined on the grant itself, and does this cover any administrative costs? Does it?
All of it, yep.
All right, so I'll see that on the budget.
Yep, I'll give you the budget.
And just interesting because I very quickly I looked at the neighbor to neighbor website too, and it's specifically all of the action items they do is what they can't do in this grant. So I'm not exactly sure of the purpose for the neighbor to neighbor, what they're going to be doing that the city of Holyoke can't be doing.
Marcus, the grant agreement, is that just a summary or is that the full grant?
This is the contract. You'll see at the end of it, there's a signature line.
Yes.
I think I printed the wrong one because it's not signed. It's signed by Barr, but it's not signed by us.
I have something signed by the mayor.
Oh, so you have the right one.
In
I sent you the
Cleveland.
right one, yeah. But I didn't print the right one here.
Okay, but the one we have attached is 6-7 pages.
Yes,
Is that the full grant?
yes.
That's full grant?
Private sector is much easier than state contracts.
Well, I'm just trying to say if that's it.
But I mean,
If there's more-
there is like a little table that we submitted for our grant application.
It says there's a budget, there's the application.
Yeah,
I'd like to
yeah,
see the
I can send you
I'd
that.
still like the answer to that question I
Yep.
asked too.
That's fine.
Yeah,
problem.
no, I'm just making sure what's out there, what we have and
Yep.
don't have.
I can email it.
Any other discussion?
I'm still waiting for the answer. What is neighbor to neighbor doing that the city of Holyoke can't be doing? Because everything's outlined, what they can't do in this, and on their website, those are specifically what they do. Voter registration, contact.
They're not doing voter registration.
Can't. It says in here, but this is what they,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is their website and their mission doesn't seem to be followed in this contract. So what are they doing that?
This
the city of Holyoke
contract does not contract neighbor to neighbor. We're working with them on how we engage the public, right? They have their own funding through the Barr Foundation, but none of this goes to neighbor to neighbor.
Okay, so why are they even brought up? Why aren't we just doing this on our own?
The capacity that it would take to do that as well would be additional work on us. They have an outfit that can engage the population, that can engage a hard to reach population and mobilize much better than we can. It's almost like asking, like, could you change your own oil and filter? I mean, you can, but if you're asking me, I wouldn't do it to my car. I would take it to someone who can do it much more faster and quicker, right?
All right, I guess I just don't follow you. But I'm happy to vote for if there's a motion to have gas launcher come in.
Marcus, on the neighbor-to-neighbor engagement of getting the message out, I guess is what you're saying. Could you also take into consideration using Holyoke Media to get some use of their resources to get the message out?
Absolutely. As a media channel, we would definitely want to do that. The work of getting the work out is what type of products, what type of talking points, what things are important to the community. We fully expect, I may be surprised, but sometimes when you talk about climate change, people don't necessarily care or have top of mind what the sea level will be 10 years from now, but what people often have, and as counselors, I'm sure, Terry, you're probably one of the ones that get a lot of complaints about air quality or the temperature quality of units. But all that is tied to how little investment has gone into the units for heating, HVAC systems, fungus that goes into the units. So engaging that population so that they can be part of this process and advocate for themselves and to the types of investments that are so hard to get. Some landlords that don't even invest in their own buildings, right? That is all a key part in reducing our energy consumption and decarbonizing, right? So that's why we need an outlet that is accustomed to doing that engagement and not just simply like posting an agenda or talking to the media. We need to have much deeper work in order for this to have a lasting effect and uptake with whatever programs that we create.
Counselor Sullivan?
And my caution would be to using a group, all right, that already has a known track record for misrepresenting the facts in trying to support their own goals. They've gone out against a needed pipeline extension here that has caused Holyoke residents now to install propane. Propane, which is dirtier than natural gas. Propane that is trucked in diesel-burning trucks. If you even look at one of the new businesses in Holyoke, GTI, you'll see a huge tanker truck of propane sitting out there on the street in front of it. And as far as their claims of just electrifying, any additional electrical capacity that Holyoke puts out comes off the grid, which we have no guarantee of how that is supplied by other sources, which are still burning carbon fuels. So they go out and advocate without any factual knowledge of what they're up against.
The state recently passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, and there's a whole portfolio of policies and initiatives taking place at the state level to go towards more renewable energy at the state level. So yes, today the grid operated by the ISO has a particular carbon component, carbon footprint, but the direction that we're heading in is that's going lower and lower, right? So yes, today someone may have switched to propane, but the long-term game here is electrification will be cleaner, and natural gas is a Band-Aid.
Margaret, you available next Monday? We put it first. If Jeannie is available.
At what
also.
time? At 6?
Yes.
I should be back, yes.
Okay.
Can I just ask one?
Counselor Murphy?
Just real quick, my concern with the paragraph in the first part with outcomes and the first part with outcome, or outputs and then outcomes, it looks to me like neighbor to neighbor almost has a veto on what can be done. I mean, they basically communicate, coordinate the selection of the management of the consultant, so it would appear they have a veto on that. And then the second part would be that the governance structure and decision-making body for designing and implementing the clean energy plan is established in conjunction with neighbor to neighbor. So
No one can supplant our authority by city charter, by our city ordinances. They have no veto power over anything. When I sign an invoice, when I make a representation to the council, that's on me as city manager. That no external force can obligate us to do anything. Right. What you're seeing here, that is the type of language where you create a partnership that wants to create a concerted effort where everyone has a say in moving it forward. As I said, I understand that you're seeing someone who you may not agree with being part of this partnership, but that is also part of the strength of this, that we can have folks who have disagreed vehemently, and we can find a way forward, because there is a way forward on this that we could all agree on. But you have to give opportunity for the work to happen.
So did the Bar Foundation approach you, or did the city approach them? And how did neighbor and neighbor get involved in the bar? I know you said they had again, let me make. I agree with a lot of the things that, maybe I don't agree with some of the ways that things get done, but again, I'm just reading what I'm seeing. This is the grant, and it also says if you don't live up to the grant, there's penalties. I'm reading that to say that in this grant, I'm not saying in the governance of the city, but in this grant, that neighbor to neighbor has basically an equal veto.
They do not have a veto on our decisions. What we want is we want to have a model that can push a plan forward, right? So if we cannot get consensus on certain actions, it will be a smaller plan. It won't be as an effective of a plan, right? But we will work on the things where we can draw consensus. They cannot force the city of Holyoke to take any action that the city of Holyoke is not willing to take. I mean, that is just categorically not what they can do. If we only get agreement on how we can do energy efficiency programs through the gas and electric, that's better than what we have today. Much better than we have today. Is it everything that we would hope it was? No, but there's no downside to it. We're not going to be on the hook for any money.
Make no mistake, Marcos, I agree with their altruism and long-term goals. It's their short-sightedness and methodology of how they've gone about things thus far that I have a problem with partnering now. And I'll let it go at that. If HG&E is fine with it, I'll be fine with it.
All set? Any further discussion? Chair will now hear a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table made and seconded. On that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? If Jeannie is available, I'll put it first on the agenda next week. If not, we'll discuss the next possible date to get everybody together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to take 8 off the table.
Motion made and seconded to take item number 8 off the table. This is introduced under my name, Chairman of the Finance, that in accordance with Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A, the city hereby accepts the provisions of the East Hampton Savings Bank donations to the Holyoke Parks and Recreation Department and authorizes the establishment of fund and method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with said donation. Terry Shepard, come on in, have a seat. Why don't you get a chat on the mic, and I know you're not going to stand up to that mic. Terry, can you walk us through this? I think you know that any donations, monetary or in kind of, especially of value, have to be accepted by the city, and that's why this is before us. I commend you on making sure it got before us. The mayor has signed off.
Yep.
And now just tell us why we're going to sign off.
It was, I'm tired. There's a couple events every year that we sponsor that we look for donations and sponsorships. Of course, we look for sponsorships all year just for city teams, mostly the organized youth leagues. We're trying to supplement our annual city budget, so we're doing a little bit more outreach, and this was our first time for the tree lighting ceremony and the parade of lights. A letter was sent out, and East Hampton Savings Bank responded with a $500 donation towards that event. So it was accepted by Park and Rec. We do have a revolving account specifically for things like this, so we don't need a new account set up. It's on the agenda really, truly, just to let the city council know this was received.
Terry, you've accepted it, but you haven't spent it yet?
It was deposited into our account because it was received in December. But if there is a problem, Counselor, there is money to reimburse, so.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, I hope not,
Just
but.
I'm reading as I'm asking questions. Any discussion? Counselor Bartley.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Counselor.
Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Always a pleasure. So this is $500 that we already received. So I think my sense is that this is almost de minimis funds, but, and I appreciate you reaching out to community leaders and the business community as well. I think there's a little process that we have to reverse. Similarly, what we've had in several years since I've been here is how we come Mackenzie Field, that we already entered into a contract, so I know that's not on the agenda for tonight, but I'm hopeful that we'll have a proposal before us, communication soon, before we have an approved deal with the Blue Sox, because we talked about that last year. So we're trying to put the horse in front of the cart and keep it in front of the cart. So there's a process that, they make an offer, the offer comes to city council, we rubber stamp it, goes back to you, and you get the check. That's the way the process works. That's not how it worked here. So we did it we did it, differently. But that shouldn't happen, especially with, you've been here so many years now, so that shouldn't happen. But I realize we're all busy and, things get crazy, and $500 is not a lot of money. But, so my take on it is, we should vote to accept it, but we need to do better down the road. And we do appreciate East Hampton Bank for its generosity, and we also appreciate all the hard work that went into the tree lighting ceremony and the lights. I mean, that's nice. It's a nice little program that's offered to the public through your department. So you'd be commended for that. But I just want to have a little better streamline so we can do it in a linear process. So I'm hopeful that we got the message about the McKenzie Stadium. We'll get a communication soon. We'll get that ship righted, and then when going down the road for East Hampton Bank, that when they send a check in, we'll hold off, and we'll get a city council approval first and go from there.
It's nice to have a new corporate citizen in town, and I think we
Agreed.
appreciate East Hampton Bank's generosity. Any other discussion?
Motion approved.
Motion made second to approve and accept the donation. We recommend this to the full city council. You do not have to be present, but that'll be next Tuesday. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Oh, we
So
like it
moved.
when you come.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Motion to take item out of the table.
Introduced under my name an appropriation of $929.19 from in-state travel to pay vacation buyback. The request comes from the mayor, but the department is our building department, and with us is Damian Cody to explain the transfer request. Welcome, Damian.
How's it going? So, it's amount of money for an employee that was just left free stamped, and I think we mentioned this about some other things, but we just did the buyout.
And the buyout is per contractual obligations? Is he under contract?
Yeah, it's unused. It's unused sick time, vacation time, things like that.
I'm sorry, I meant, is he part of a union or bargaining?
Age, yeah.
He is part of age, okay. Councilor Hay.
So they get paid 100% of their unused sick time?
Up to a cap. Yeah, it's a cap of, I think, the last contract was something like $5,000, so somebody,
Still a lot of money.
yeah, it can be, but it's a 1 for 3. So 3 days you get, or 1 for 4, I think.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Bartley.
What position went to East Hampton?
He was our local inspector, local building official. He took the commissioner's job in East Hampton.
He's a building commissioner now of East Hampton?
Now, yes.
Now he's right.
Yep.
Right. And what was his position here?
He was he's known as a local inspector by the state law, so he was just one of our building officials.
Okay, how long had he been here?
3 years.
3 years. Oh, okay, well. And then just for the in-state travel line item, I didn't check the budget before I came tonight, but what do we budget in there generally? And
About $7,500.
okay, and how much have we expended?
Maybe 2,000. Not that much, but the theory is we're down one person. So it's for the inspectors, and we're not going to fill that position. It'll probably take us 6 months to a year typically to fill our positions. He left for about a $25,000 increase, so getting somebody to fill the seat's going to be tough, and we'll have plenty of extra money in there.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yep, so you kind of answered the question I was going to ask anyways, Damian. How much was he making here?
50, about
50?
50, 51, yep.
And he's now making $75,000 in Northampton.
East Hampton,
East Hampton.
and it's actually more than that, yeah. But it's actually 20,000 more than I'm making. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I'm just
kind of
trying to remember
misspoke
how
there.
much smaller a city East Hampton was than Holyoke.
Yeah, they're about half.
Yeah.
And they only have a 4-day work week, not bad.
You're not telling us anything, are you?
No. Hey, I didn't apply for the job. Yeah.
Now, don't forget, East Hampton, according to their mayor, although I have a little different story about this is known as Whoville. But when Dr. Seuss was on top of Mount Tom, I heard he was facing this way, not that way.
Who was?
Dr. Seuss.
Just kidding.
Got it?
Any further discussion?
Motion to pass the transfer.
Second.
Motion made, seconded to pass the transfer. All those in favor? Any opposed? Damien, I'm sorry. I think we could have put this on the agenda a little different, but that executive session tonight, we had to do first, and I know that you just said it. I've taken care of you the last 2 agendas. Get out of here. Thank you.
Motion to suspend the rules, take items 10 and 11 together as a
We have some
package.
housekeeping to take up items 10 and 11. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item 10 was the bond that would have, pending the outcome, or I shouldn't say outcome, but pending the finding of revenue to support a bond that would pay for the proposed project of 2 middle schools in the city of Holyoke. As we know, the funding source of a override failed the test of the general public, and there is no revenue identified. The MSBA has closed the book on this proposal for the city of Holyoke, if my understanding, and that meeting took place, I forget the exact date, but somewhere since, it was after the November election, obviously, but it was somewhere in December. So this is no longer needed, or do we have the revenue to pay for it? Even with the override, personally, I don't think we would have had the revenue to pay for it anyways. But the Chair would suggest, as according to item number 11, that we get this back to the full city council so they can dispose of it. Item number 11 is introduced by Councilor Bartley, and it simply requests that the full city council take up action on this matter. Any discussion?
Well, just motion to deny the bond, and 11's complied with.
Motion made second to deny item number 10, and that item number 11 has been complied with. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Just a reminder, agendas. Meetings next 2 Mondays. It's coming a little bit clearer. The contract for the supervisors, officers should be on the agenda. A couple other items, along with, follow up to what we did this evening with the grant that Marcus we were just discussing. And then with the availability of people, we'll be looking at a meeting on the following Monday, which could include the Department of Revenue orders that are here, emails that are here, both by Councilor Bartley, Councilor McGee, and items that have been looking for a discussion as to exactly what did happen last year as we balanced out, or I should say we solidified the tax rate by balancing out the budget. So that was just a quick update. Okay, I think we're all aware of it, but I just want to let you know where we are. Any further things for discussion? Nothing on the agenda?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.